French Berserk is peak. And it's low-key better than Berserk. Let me show you why. January 21st, 1973, 10:22 p.m. The place of the revolution was filled to capacity. A group of 20,000 people stood in utter silence as a silver-colored blade slid down into the nape of his neck of the man once called King Louis XVI, by the hands of one pure man. We open outside of this large manor with a little girl creeping into the house and peeping through a locked door. That locked door showing, an ominous room, which I'm not going to get into, but if you're curious, just you wait. We cut to two men on horseback entering the city of Paris. There's currently an announcement being made. Long story short, they're up into Texas. We find out that these two men are a part of the Sanson family, a family of executioners, and they basically have the cooties of death. They got bad omen, bad vibes, bad energy, bad everything, bruh. And these two are here at City Hall because Charles, the son, has been getting bullied from school to school and keeps getting expelled because of students and parents' complaints alike. But as a result of their previous donations to the school, they walk out with a letter of invitation to another school that might accept him. And Charles, all sad from this, is crying all the way home on his horseback. But look at this art, though. This art is crazy. We haven't even scratched the surface yet, but I'm telling you, this is probably my favorite art I've ever seen in a manga. I'm telling you. Back at their mansion later for family dinner, Charles is saying he's sick of school. He's sick of the treatment that he gets, and he wants to drop out. He's tired of the loneliness that comes with being born into this family. The matriarch sitting at the table is like, cool, you're not going to start as an apprentice. Then they say grace, and through this prayer, we are introduced to the members of the Sanson family. And literally right after the amen, like one panel afterwards, I kid you not, he throws a tantrum. He starts yelling about if execution is truly justice, and if they're doing the right thing, why are they despised? Which he's kind of based for. Like, here from the future, he's right. Like, he's kind of on the right side of history for this. Just for this show. Just for this. And I mean, look how villainous they look at some of these panels. Like, he's in the right. Low-key, he's in the right. Like, come on. And speaking of villains, look how fucking menacing Baptiste looks as he opens the fucking great abyss, bro. He's sending his ass to hell. Like, the timeout room is actually like the back rooms, bro. And the timeout room is a torture chamber. So, like, not too far off. We cut to Charles being tortured by Baptiste, but I'm not even gonna discuss this. Like, we'll put the panels on the screen, but I think if I actually say what's happening, my life might be in danger, bro. Like France is gonna send the top fucking hitman. They're gonna send Hitman 47 to kill me with an old-timey musket, bro. He's gonna step on a blueberry muffin and hit me with the baguette special, bro. I'm cooked. And I'd give a spoiler warning, but it's history, bro. This shit's been happened. But the manga also does something which I always think it's cold as shit when mangas do this, where it tells you the ending in like the first chapter just because it's like calling the shot. It's like, you know what's gonna happen, but like, watch how we get there. And they basically show us that Charles Sanson ends up having a legendary kill count, bro. He gets over 3,000 confirmed bodies. King Louis XVI, Queen Marie Antoinette, she's the one who's like, let them eat cake, like her. And bro, at the end, himself. Like, that is like, I did not remember that from history, bro. I was a sleepy soba in 9th grade, first period, world history class, bro. I was knocked. I was honk shoe, me. But this is cold. I'm not gonna lie. If this manga was out then, I would have. Actually, it was. You know what? If any 9th grade freshman world history teachers are watching this, add this to the curriculum, honestly. And while I'm here yapping, we've seen that this style of torture is what got the first generation, Charles Sanson's grandfather, to basically resign himself to live as Sanson, an executioner. And after some insane berserkish type of art with tears in both of their eyes, which I find kind of telling, because Baptiste, if anyone, can empathize with Charles' situation, as he probably had to resign himself to the same cruel fate in a similar fashion, most likely. And yeah, with that, Charles Henry Sanson accepts his fate. Speaking of berserkish art, we're introduced to the Sanson family longsword. If Charles is Guts, this is his dragon slayer. And actually, there's a lot of parallels to Berserk in Innocent, the manga that we're currently reading. Charles is Guts, Griffith would be French Parliament, and we're gonna introduce our Casca this chapter. Oh, wait, sorry, I got one more. Hear me out. Guts has to kill apostles because of the brand of sacrifice, right? Right. Charles has to kill French citizens because of the Sanson family crest. It's like his family crest is his brand of sacrifice. And you know, true. I'm kind of like them too. It's like, I have to ask you to subscribe. That's like my apostle. That's like the subscription is my brand of sacrifice. You know what I mean? And like, you gotta press it. I don't know the analogy I'm making here, but like, sub the fuck up, please. Like execute the subscribe button and execute the like button, please. All right, back to the fucking manga, man. All right, so back to the sword. The main thing you need to keep in mind is that there are 3 holes at the tip of the sword, and if you swing it vertically downwards, it will not sing. And if you slightly tilt it, even a little bit, it sings like a criminal will sing. Basically, if the sword whistles, the person thistles. I can't think of a word that rhymes with whistles, but if the sword is whistling, they're gonna die. Basically, you're gonna chop off the head. After Charles's little sword practice, back at the house, Big A, we call her, Charles' grandma, basically tells him, if you don't cut the head, you're cut. You know what I mean? Cut to the next day, where Charles is back out there trying to visualize decapitating someone, and we get a glimpse of our Casca. I'm gonna let the page speak for itself. All right, so that was a whistle. I was never good at whistling, but our Casca hears what sounds to be like a flute, which is actually just our sword. Remember the little tidbit I gave about the sword earlier? This is where it's coming in. This is where it matters. It's because of this whistle that these two meet. All right, afterwards, we learn that the summer solstice is coming up, and with it, the fire festival of St. John's Eve. And the Sansons have received an official request from Earl Chartois. I'm going to say Chartois. And Baptiste is going to bring Charles along with him for his first job. Fast forward, we're at the festival, and Charles is in the lobby or the waiting room, whatever, thinking about his first encounter with the mysterious blonde, aka our Casca. Baptiste enters and tells Charles that this is not going to be an official execution, but rather just entertainment for the party. And we also learn that Earl Chartois is an important guy that backed the Sansons. Baptiste tells Charles that Charles is going to have to do a test cut on the corpse of a lamb or a deer, and that he's going to be inspected as the 4th in the Samson family line. After some party festivities, we find out that Earl Chartois has a son named Jean. And that son turns out to be our Casca, the mysterious blonde. Jean's brought out, and Charles is like, oh, fuck no.
It's like I had a fucking hair bomb method acting.
Yeah, there's a fucking line, bro. Danielson is like, oh, Chartois, a lion, how skibbity, you truly are a W host. Then Jean breaks out into song like it's Hamilton, and everyone's even more hyped about it because they're like, oh my gosh, the lion represents England. Fuck yeah, dude, fuck them. Danielson then inquires who sang with such riz, and Chartois is like, that's my boy, which is like, you think back when they first met, like, I didn't bring it up earlier, but like, think about that. French people, am I right? Unless your French is subscribed, then I don't mean you, obviously. So Baptiste is like, you know, you still gotta cut though. And he's like, come with me back inside. We gotta inspect the equipment. Turns out he's actually having a fucking stroke. He's mid-stroke. Not talking the sword kind. Hey-oh. I'm not talking that kind either. Chill. I'm talking like a sword stroke. Like, yeah. And after some weird strokes for weird folks, Charles gets called out to, you know, do the deed. The lion. Oh my gosh. I like cutting the lion. Where your head's at? And with some actual like shower thoughts in real life type of talking, Charles refuses to cut the lion. He basically says the Sanson family sword could only be used to cut down criminals. And for criminals, they have to cut their hair so the hair doesn't get in the way of the execution, right? But this lion has a long mane, proof of its innocence. And to have him use the sword to cut down the lion would be an insult to the king. And you know, like, they love their king. And literally everybody is so moved that he gets like a round of applause, and they're like, wow, the king sure is amazing. He's so benevolent. Wow. They're glazing crazy. After Baptiste is like, bro, I would have done it. It's like, bro, no one give a fuck what you would have done, bro. Like, if you don't handle that stroke, buddy, just kidding, you're not my buddy. But yeah, he pulls a telltale and he's like, the world will remember these actions. But we're not there yet. Where we are though is the next day, where Jean pulls up on Charles and, you know what I mean? But the next morning, Chartois is discovered to have a holy Bible in his room, and his butler, help, servant, whoever, warns him that if it's exposed to the public, you know, his life is going to be at risk. Back at the Sanson household, Baptiste has received an order for decapitation and tells Charles the accused is 14 years old, and his name is Jean de Chartois, the son of Earl Chartois, the man whose invitation they accepted a few days ago. Our Casca. Jean was framed to have the Bible and declared a traitor. Charles thinks back to the heart-to-heart he had with Jean, where Jean tells him his tragic upbringing, right? His mom was an English prostitute. She died of illness. Chartois brought her in. You know, I don't want to say it. And yeah, man, fuck. Only 14. Now sentenced to die. Fast forward, the time of the execution is nearing, and after a lot of torture and, horrible living conditions, we see what's left of Jean. And Charles tells Jean that tomorrow, on Earl Danielson's orders, Charles is gonna be the one to execute Jean. And it's as Baptist said, this is Charles' punishment for his quote-unquote naive justice. And the day of reckoning is here. Jean pulls up at the carriage, and we don't see Jean, we see a doll. A practice doll which Charles used to practice sweeping Atlas off his feet, which is basically just slicing the right part of the neck so you can finish it in one swing. Baptist calls it a waltz. And I think he calls it that because in his mind, it's something graceful and elegant, and you're just going through the motions. But I think of it as both sides already know that the person on the chopping block is gonna get chopped off. So you think there's a mutual understanding that both parties want this execution to be smooth. But I feel like it's also cruel in that same way. Like, obviously it's already cruel, it's an execution, but I think it's additionally cruel because the person that is about to get their head chopped off has to almost lean into it, and because of that, there's no moral victory, there's no message to send, there's no protest to make, there's no anything. It's just done. It snuffs out even the idea of resistance, much less the act of resistance. And we know there's a revolution coming, right? It's the French Revolution, but I feel like in this moment, there's no spark. There's not even the oxygen to make a spark. You know what I mean? It's like we're watching a vacuum. And as Charles looks out into a sea of dolls, him being a doll himself in his own eyes, readies his swing to cut down the doll before him. And as the long sword races to the neck, he calls for Mary. And the sword stops. Atlas was not swept off his feet. And yells for him to finish the job. Charles averts his eyes. Covered in blood, the job's done. The crowd directs their gaze towards Charles. Murderer, 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 murderer.
I'm not a bad person! What? Are you blaming me? I didn't do this. Everybody just made me do it. I'm innocent!
And everyone was like, whoa, he just said the title. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody said that. But what they did say is kill Sanson, kill the devil, and amidst rocks being thrown, punches being flown, Baptist walks up on his own, and he claims the remains. He takes credit for the execution and ensures that Charles's name is nowhere near on the record. All right, cut to corpse class. Baptist is going back to basics. He's giving out a lesson on dissection. Charles is having a tough time because, trauma and the human empathy. But little bro Louis over here, only 9 years old, he's taking to it like a fish takes to water. When I first read this, I was like, man, something's not right with this kid. Look at the look in his eye. But reading it back, I'm like, you know what? Children are kind of psychotic. So this checks out. And speaking of checkout, a woman comes to get checked out by the Sansons because they also practice medicine. Baptist takes a look at her and does a technique called bloodletting, which basically is out with the old and in with the new, but with blood. And the idea being new blood is healthier blood, which overall makes you healthier. Charles is posted up outside, and Baptist is saying washing one's hands of things that do not serve a purpose is vital to maintaining the health of a working system. And in Charles's case, that's killing off the part of him that cares. Later that night, after contemplating suicide, Charles decides to become a monk. He's like, you know what? This is the only way I can amend for my sins. And he goes to tell his dad his decision. Charles then walks in on his parents fornicating under consent of the king. And, some of these panels can't really show on YouTube. And if you want to see them, you're on the wrong website, bro. You're on the wrong website. Or read it for yourself, honestly. Because this scene is fucking wild. But let's do our best to get through it. So Baptist goes on about how Charles is a disappointment, a failure as the eldest son, and Baptist wants to make a better successor. Baptist then notices Charles is outside, makes direct eye contact with him, says children are nothing more than puppets created by a parent's seed. We could just make as many spares as we need. As I can't even say it. I can't even show it, honestly. He then makes direct eye contact with Charles as he finishes, and then that tells him to die and get out of his sight. He's like, I'll kill you. Basically, Charles, subscribe for Charles. Okay, now 2 months have passed. Charles is a changed man. He's no longer vomiting at dissection. He's teed up as an executioner. He heads out to City Hall that morning, dressed in the most French fit you've ever seen. He reeks of death. Everyone is like, ooh, but he does not care. He's literally a changed person, and he's no longer ashamed of his family. He's no longer ashamed of who he is and where he comes from. He, in fact, wants to change where he comes from. He says when this world absorbed in old convention changes, the one to open up a new age will be him. Not gonna lie, Charles is moving like he pressed the subscribe button. He's moving like a sober subscriber, honestly. And this change is noticed as he walks past a group of nuns, and one of them's kind of feeling him. But Charles dead thinks to himself, he says, I will never love a woman in my life. I've abandoned that happiness that normal people seek. And I can already hear y'all. Oh, he's just like me for real. He's just like me. No, he's not. No, he's not. You opening up the weather app at the function is not like Charles. It is Sigma, though. That is pretty Sigma. And he vows to Jean's rotten remains that he will become an impeccable Monsieur de Paris. With his generation, he will end his accursed family line. And the nun says pretty soon, social statuses and classes will be gone. A world of freedom and equality is coming, and you can even marry a king. And the manga's like, actually, this is Marie Jeanne Beaucoup, later the royal mistress to Louis XV, and is later going to be captured by revolutionaries and by Sanson's hand, executed by guillotine. The manga just says this. It's like, damn, okay. And 2 years later, one more person whose life would be taken by Sanson's blade of destiny, the tragic queen, would be born. Again, the manga just keeps spoiling shit, but it's okay. I trust you. Like, I didn't know that, but I mean, I guess it is history. And now we're back at the Sanson household, and 2 years have passed. The year is now 1755, and the day, November 2nd. And Charles is outside just straight feeling himself. He's steeled his resolve, he's steeled his nerves, and now he's like, I'm the Monsieur de Paris. I am no longer given orders by anyone. I don't know why I'm making him sound like a dork. But anyways, as he thinks that to himself, he hears a bird just get its neck snapped like a wishbone. R.I.P. the bird. He then follows the sound, and while he does that, we cut to Austria, Vienna, where a princess has been born. Her name? Google it. No, I'm just kidding. I'll tell you in a second. But the mom is basically saying that if this child were to be wed with one of the young crown princes of France, it'll reaffirm the alliance that they entered with France that year. Cut back to the Sanson household. Charles discovers that his little sister Marie has a collection of little dead animal bodies of all different shapes and sizes. It's really something that exists. And she's in there dissecting a robin like a surgeon, just super precise, everything that Charles wasn't. And cut back to the palace, we find out that this baby becomes Marie Antoinette. And the mom is like, may you grow up wrapped in lovely ribbon and frills. And then we cut back to our Marie, the Sanson Marie, and she's like, fuck ribbons and frills, bruh, I'm different. And I don't know if you remember the siblings introduction cards. It always said their name and then their fate. But for some reason, she is the only one whose fate is just scratched out more and more egregiously every time it's on the screen. Or the page, rather. But don't Google it. I haven't Googled it. Don't Google it. If you know history, forget about it. This is probably, this is the one time the manga hasn't been like, and this is what happened later. You know, so, it's probably insane. So let bro cook. All right? Just let him cook. Let him cook. All right, we continue with some Sanson sibling bonding time. Charles is teaching Marie Latin and is thinking to himself that Marie is just a better candidate for Monsieur de Paris. Like, she's just built for it, right? She's able to dissect these animals just from listening to the lectures. She takes to everything that Charles was scared of really well. Marie then asks Charles to retell a story about how he cut the old lady Recambaugh's neck. He tells her how difficult it was for him because the woman that he was executing just didn't match the crime in his eyes. And to make matters worse, they were unable to hang her. In the end, it took him 6 tries to actually finish the execution. Charles is looking back on it, he's like, damn, if only I had set the rope to push on her carotid artery more tightly, she wouldn't have had to suffer. And then Mary's creepy ass comes up from behind and grabs him by his neck. And she's like, is this where it was, big brother? And it's like, okay, bro. And instead of being like, let go of me, like, Charles just sits there in it and pictures himself getting choked by Baptist. Charles said, not fight, not flight, freeze. But lucky for him, the outburst of a baby gets her to stop. That baby being the new son to the Baptist family. And we learned that Baptist is just nonstop trying to make kids. He's trying to make endless successors because he hates Charles. It's literally just out of spite. That kid was not born out of love. And is getting no love from Marie because only boys can become the Monsieur de Paris. So she's just like, fuck off and die, little bro. And Charles thinks to himself that they're the same way. They're both hated in this house, and yet they both dream of a dawn that will never come. And I'm going to be so for real right now. This upcoming arc has a moment that flipped a switch in my head where I was like, all right, this might be better than Berserk. Continuing on, not talking fashion, but we're in Saint Laurent. The church of Saint Laurent, that is. Charles is finishing up a prayer the morning of an execution, and as he walks out of the pew, he sees a sickly child that appears to be a beggar. But a hand reaches out and corrects the record. And this guy's like, don't look down on us. And Charles is like, my fault. But he points out that his son is most likely suffering from some sort of skeletal disorder from a lack of nutrition. And he's like, my house isn't far from here, and we run a medical practice. You can do whatever you want, but you should come with me. And then Charles tries to come off like magnanimous, and he's like, don't worry. free of charge. But bro is not taking too kindly to that. He yells at him, he's like, bro, fuck off. Then the execution rolls around. Pun not intended. You know what? It's kind of intended. Anyways, he's on the wheel for stealing some belongings. And some people in the crowd are noticing that the second estate gets treated differently than the third estate. Because if someone in the second estate stole what this guy stole, he probably would have been fine. But if it's the third estate, they're finished. We spot over in the crowd the father and the son from the church, and we see that they've moved to Paris recently for work. And they notice Charles is the executioner. Next to them in the crowd, we see, I think her name was Marie, the nun. There's a lot of Maries in France at this time, it seems. And she confirms his suspicion that Charles really is the executioner, the Monsieur de Paris. And he's like, oh, fuck, dude, really? Fuck, dude. I literally touched him, bro. I put the paws on him. And as Marie starts talking him up, we see Charles do a kind of sick play. He walks up to the guy on the wheel and pretends like he's gonna wipe off his shoe, but immediately just suffocates him. And Marie explains to the guy that Charles puts them out of their misery, making their death as quick and painless as possible. And she even goes further to say that she's a fan, and that if she ever got executed, she'd want to die by Charles's hands. Foreshadowing. Top 10 things said before their death. Next thing we know, guy's outside with his son outside of the Sanson family gates. And speaking of foreshadowing, the manga pulls us to the side real quick for a quick sidebar. Lets us know that the harvest that year was a poor one, and along with the harsh winter came a large-scale famine attacking the people. Keyword, attacking, because I'm sure this one panel is giving this context, but let's read between the lines here a little bit. Anyways, back at the Sansons, we finally learn their names. The dad is Damien, and the son is Jack. Charles is pulling a WebMD and telling him every single thing that is wrong with his son. And I just wanted to bring this up because I thought it was kind of sad. Damien spent all of his money on perfume because he was told smelling nice things was the equivalent of medicine because diseases came from bad smells, which is like an old superstition at the time. But it just made me think like, fuck, man, that sucks. Charles then gives Jack some cider for his scurvy and gets a bed ready for him. But as we follow the help that's taking Jack to the guest room, we come across Baptist, who is stanced up like a villain. And after taking a look at Jack, he's like, no, send him back to the medical bedroom. But Anne is like, no, fuck that. Listen to Charles. He's the big dog in town now, little bro. Sorry about it. Charles then pulls Damien aside and he's like, Jack only has a few days left to live. His condition is severe. So I'd at least like him to spend his last few days with warm food and a warm bed. This shit is heartbreaking, bro. We see Damien break down and he's like, fuck, dude, what did we come to Paris for? After his wife died, Jack and him managed to eke out a living for the two of them doing field work. But with this famine this year, there's been nothing to eat. And not only that, the tax collectors came and took even their rice seeds for next year. And they finally managed to make it there, but there's no work. They had no money and they couldn't buy any food or pay for anywhere to live. And he thinks back to all the nights that he thought they were gonna freeze to death sleeping underneath a bridge like some trolls. And I say trolls because in Damien's words, us poor aren't even human. The next morning, Damien takes Charles's horse. He asks Charles to lend it to him for the night so he can go back, pick up some farm tools and sell them because in his words, we ain't beggars. He says he's gonna pay the doctor bill proper and send him off as an admirable human being. Man, hearts in the chat for Damien, man. Somebody on the Sansa staff is like, bruh, no, he's lying, bro. He's just gonna take the horse. And then Damien's like, bro, if you don't believe me, come with me, bro. Come with me. And he picks up Charles and they go. And we get a quick peek of Baptist sitting in the same room as Jack, looking at a bone saw in a funny way. But we'll leave that there for now. As the pair ride through some beautiful manga panels of some landscapes, we see how bad it is for the average farmer. They're all broke vagrants just wandering around with no hope. And they arrive to what's left of a house. This shit looks like somebody stopped pressing the build button in Fortnite midway. And an old woman's like, the tax collectors probably got that shit when you're gone, little bro. And Jack snaps because this old woman is wearing his deceased wife's dress. She took it from her grave. And she's like, bro, get off me. Like, what's wrong with the living wearing the clothes, bro? Like, I don't have enough money to mourn the dead, bro. They took everything. Come on. And as Jack stands there clenching what's left of the dress, Charles gets his privilege checked. He's like, damn, I thought I was the only one suffering. That's my bad. But the two find themselves standing in front of the Palace of Versailles. It's where the king lives. But before we continue with the events of the story, I want to set the stage a little bit. In this world, the first estate is those that pray. The second estate is those that fight. And the third estate are those that plow. An individual's life is decided in advance based on their birth and status rather than their abilities. Under this absolute monarchy, a system with the royal family at the apex, the third estate, which is the commoners, make up 98% of the people that have been exploited by the ruling class, which is only made up of a mere 2%. Okay, history lesson over. Back at the palace gates, Charles and Damien are in awe. They're like, somewhere in those lights through that front gate is the king. And Damien tells Charles that long ago, the lord of a manor let him see the coin that has the king carved on it. And he wonders what kind of face the king really has. He's like, we can see those lights from the dark so well, but from where they're standing, they probably can't see us at all, even though we're definitely right here. Damien says he no longer wishes for anything else. All he wants is for everyone to know that us workers, getting covered in mud and dust until they're pitch black, are alive. Damien then wraps what's left of the dress around his neck, and he tells Charles, he's like, I gotta go. I got something I gotta do. And he apologizes that he never gave the money he owed, but he has to ask if he could bury Jack for him. And with that, Damien, a shadow of himself, quite literally, runs off into the night. Three months later, we're back at the Sansons, family dinner, and Anne goes, do you remember in January when the Royal Majesty was attacked by a vulgar ruffian at the Palace of Versailles? Everyone remembers the incident. Rumors about it spread all over Paris. But today, he was judged and sentenced to the most unpleasant punishment between heaven and earth, and the criminal's name, Robert Francois Damiens, the father of a child which was previously accepted into the Sanson house for medical treatment. And Anne says it was fortunate that Baptist disposed of the child so quickly, preventing any rumors from brewing of them housing the son of such a criminal. We're told that this criminal had been hired as a servant, stole from his master's residence, and was on the run. It had already been declared that he'd be hanged to death, and at the moment the Royal Majesty had just exited from the Queen's living room and was about to board his carriage. Drunk and in desperation, this petty thief committed the most evil act in all of French history. He pointed a blade at the King of France and continues, in tears, she's like, what a blessing. It has not been done in 150 years, not since the great criminal Francois Ravaillac assassinated Henry IV. Our Sanson family will be committing the execution of a cartelman's, tearing a part of the four quarters of a living body. I don't know how she said it. Probably like that though. But the room falls silent. Anne is like, in order to prevent anything like this from happening again, we have to make it worse than last time. Gotta be even more pain and even more fear. Charles claims this is no longer just an execution anymore. It's some sort of sick exhibition, and he refuses to take part in it as the Monsieur de Paris. Anne yells. She's like, the very idea of objecting the Royal Highness is preposterous. And she tries to get this little blade on him, and he catches it, bro. He catches the switch, he catches the chocolate, he catches the hand. And he's like, I'm no longer your puppet. I will not yield to senseless violence. Jean breaks up the tension by crying like a child, which he seems to have reverted to, cause Anne immediately pops a breast and then breastfeeds him. Yeah. Anyways, the execution is now just a day away, and Charles is hurrying to find out if it's really the Damien that we know, who will be ripped limb from limb the very next day. But we hear a voice of someone who is directing the building of the stage for the execution. This man is Charles's uncle Nicholas. We learn that he's here to help Charles with the execution because, you know, Baptist is the way he is right now. Remember that? Yeah. Charles insists that the two of them go to visit the criminal, but Nicholas is like, don't even say that. He's currently being dealt every form of pain known to man, and after 2 months of this torture, his heart will have collapsed. His flesh will be already starting to smell rotten, and he's now become something other than human. And right outside where Damien's being held, the two of them are stopped, because any further and they'll be in the domain of the torturers. And the person saying this lets them know that this is the Altair, a place where the light of the sun does not reach. And this person has a name, Subis. Subis is a professional torturer, and Subis kicks him out. Subis is like, bruh, job's not done. Subis then throws some shade at Nick for being content as the number 2 and continues torturing. Damiens takes his shit like a champ, bro. Not even a yell, not even a scream, not even a noise. Just fucking tanks his shit. Light work, no diff. Charles, in disbelief, starts screaming for answers and steps into the torture chamber and immediately gets hit with a needle to the neck. Subis just pulls that shit out on him and is like, I'm the one who's gonna draw out the truth. And Nick's like, oh? Uh-oh. It's been 2 months. You haven't gotten anything? Just like 147 years ago, when your great-grandfather could not crack Ravaillac no matter how he tried. Subis hits Nick with that same needle and no reaction, unbothered, unfazed. And he's like, have you been reporting this to Versailles? Because I heard you were ordered not to harm him. And you wouldn't want to owe the Sansons anything, would you? So until we take over at the execution tomorrow, treat him with courtesy. He then takes Charles and they head out. And he's like, don't worry, Charles, bro. I'll handle everything. I'll handle it. Don't even worry. And then in his head, he's like,
Because Paris will be mine.
we then get hit with a flashback where we basically just see Baptist get more attention than Nick. Kind of your standard, like, why not me? Like that type of shit. And back at the Sanson estate, we get a first-hand glimpse of how messed up the relationship between Anne and her two sons is, with the conversation between Anne and Nick. It's a microcosm of the relationship where Anne neglects Nick generally and then only showers him with praise and love to get him to do something for her. We're shown this too with some haunting imagery that tells us a larger truth about the family's dynamics and Anne's position in it, her ability to control everything and everyone. She's a spider and everyone else is caught in her web. She then gives Charles a massage, trying to do something similar that she did with Nick, be nice, be kind, and, get him to be the Monsieur de Paris under her fingertips. While this is happening, we peer into the past and see how Anne got Baptist the successor spot when he was only 7 years old. And a glimpse at her true nature. Charles fell asleep mid-flashback, and Anne leaves him with the jacket that was handed down from 147 years ago by the executioner that performed the previous écartèlement. Afterwards, late that night, Nick visits his friend Andre and asks him to replace all the horses that they've already selected for the execution and replace them with the weakest, most feeble horses he could find. The idea being, make it as painful as possible and make it as long as possible. Pause. Resume. And with that, it's now March 28th, 1757, the day of Damiens' execution. People all over from France are coming over in hordes to see the first écartèlement in 147 years. Nicholas rides in on horseback and thinks to himself, today, everything ends. This will be the last day I'm called the little brother of the Monsieur de Paris. Today, the crowds gathered here will be witness to history. Today will be the birth of one that controls the executions over all of France. Next, we cut to the tormentors standing around Damiens' body like a campfire. They've been torturing him for the last 2 minutes, but they stop because, any more it could mean his death, and they don't want to execute a corpse. And they're like, to have 2 months and not be able to draw out a confession, he really is just like his ancestors. Subis, you will be hearing from us. And as they pick up what's left of Damiens to take him to the priest, Charles intercepts. He asks if they can give him some wine, and they don't really give a shit. They just walk away. He's under Charles' jurisdiction now. Damiens chugs the wine, and Charles is like, quickly, bro, just tell me the truth. And he's like, I ain't telling. He says the truth is something that people twist to suit their needs anyways. Shortly after, it's time to take him to the chapel. They got my man in a potato sack, like a sack of potatoes or something. Or like that one event at Field Day where you're in a potato sack. I don't remember what it's called, but if you remember, drop a comment below. And the guards want to take him there by kicking him like a sack of potatoes or something. Just kicking him like a soccer ball, obviously, or a football. We're in Europe. And Charles sticks up for him. He's like, I'm the Monsieur de Paris. He belongs to me. You cannot lay a hand on him. Which is pretty ironic that he could only protect them by brandishing his power as his executioner. Good observation by Charles. And Charles Ever the Poet praised to himself as someone who only possesses hooked claws that tear apart human flesh. Perhaps the desire to protect someone is rather warped. Back outside, Andre tells Nick that he hasn't been able to find any sulfur or turpentine. Nick goes to ask Subis, but Subis is a drunk mess who's lamenting over the fact that he couldn't get one scream, let alone a confession. Nick sends Andre on a store run because he's his foster brother and not associated with the Sanson family. He sends him out with the usual grocery list, sulfur, oil, lead, turpentine, and firewood. The usual. And inside the chapel, Jack is having the most depressing conversation with his dead son. He's then taken to the top church in Paris to confess his sins. But when he arrives, he finds that his son is alive. Charles tells him that day they went to Versailles. Baptist attempted a revitalizing surgery on Jack, an amputation, one that was extraordinarily dangerous, even for an adult. There really was a risk as to whether or not his heart would give out from the pain, but in exchange for his leg, his life was salvaged. And after his wound healed, he couldn't just wait there without knowing if his father would ever return. So, at Baptist's discretion, he was sent to an orphanage. He goes on to say, he just wanted to learn what color the Royal Majesty's blood was. His Royal Majesty wasn't no god or anything. When he got hurt, he acted hurt. When he was scared, he cowered. He was human, just like us. Says there's no reason for common folk to have to wait to get bread. For guys like that, he tries to call out to his son. But he realizes if he says his name, he's gonna be put to death. Jack is asked if he knows him. He says he's never seen him before in his life. Damien thinks to himself, if he'll just die being misunderstood by his only son.
Just let me say this!
It's true that he stabbed the king, but it wasn't for money. And he wasn't hired by anybody either. He did it for God.
And for the future people of France!
That was the moment that put it over Berserk for me.
Low key. I haven't finished it. Chill.
Alright, where were we? Uncle Nick slaps the shit out of Charles for asking to redo the proceeding, and we hear this phrase once again. The ball has already begun. They will not be allowed to stop their dance until the musical performance has ended. Skipping ahead, while Andre tries to get the stuff Nick asked for, Marie and the other Marie, along with a bunch of Parisians, all make their way to the execution spot, and we get one of my favorite convos. Nick asks Charles if his death is really that enjoyable for the audience. And he's like, you're pretty odd. You're crying over a criminal like me that no one really give a fuck about. And Charles responds, my uncle told me that once a ball has started, it cannot be stopped. And Nick replies, that's because it's easier for everybody to just go with the music and follow some predetermined dance, i.e. social norms, tradition, etc. And so Nick asked him to dance. And I really like this metaphor of just people going with the way things is. I think if you've ever tried to do something different or make a change, that's always the toughest thing to get through. And back to Nick, he's like, Doc, you got any dreams? My dream was to feed my kid a stomach full of bread. And Charles is like, my dream is to get rid of executions. The two get some unsavory looks. And Nick goes, humans like us that can only do clumsy steps like these are hated by the ones with good manners and then finally driven out of the circle. Then Andre gets the stuff and the execution is set to begin. And as Damien gets taken to the platform, he says, do all you can to see that those ugly steps of yours don't get you shot from everybody like I was. And as Nick and Charles step onto the platform, he's like, wait, why the fuck do you have that jacket? That's the jacket from the previous one. Don't tell me. Was this Anne's suggestion? Did she mean to say that without a doubt, I'm cooked for the Monsieur de Paris? And we see Anne looking over like, yep, I know that's right. And we get a symbolic walk up from the two of them. Charles with an expression as stoic as man can get. While on the other hand, Nick is literally cramping to the pressure. He's crumbling. And Charles mogs him to the platform. And Nick thinks to himself, I'm already good as dead. If how brutal this is gets through to everybody, even just a little bit, we getting closer to your dream, Doc. Hearts in the chat for Nick. And Charles commences the execution. And everyone in the audience hit the in unison. And Charles is like, we're now gonna tear off the flesh of the criminal's arms, chest, thighs, and legs with these scorched pliers. Then pour a mixture of boiling oil, melted lead, resin, wax, and sulfur on him. After which, we will burn his right hand, which held the knife that committed the crime, with sulfur. Man, this shit read like a cooking recipe, and he hasn't even mentioned the horses yet, mind you. But as he's thinking this, in true anime manga fashion, he's having an internal monologue. He's saying, my steps are certainly immature. They may not be getting sturdy or a TikTok dance, but what if these steps are the steps of a future no one knows of 100 or 200 years in the future? Perhaps the future will not have these constraining cravats. Maybe there will be no coiling or frills or corsets that constrain women, and people will live without discrimination based on being a king, a farmer, a man, or a woman. Monsieur de Damiens, I am no longer afraid to perform these steps. Now, won't you dance with me? Nick then had his own little monologue, but he doesn't have enough aura for me to read it. He then asked Charles to stand back, and he's like, Subis was the one I originally entrusted, and he didn't come through, so it's only natural I come through. As Nick tries to tear some skin off with the pliers, he thinks about everyone's expectations, that if he fails him, he won't be Monsieur de Paris. And if that doesn't happen, he won't get love from Anne. As he actually starts to feel nauseous. He's like, fuck, I gotta clutch up, or if not, I'm having a sleepover at the jailhouse. But you know what? I'm a Sanson too. Like, this should be light work, no diff. And as a pool of blood forms around his loafers, we get into Genjutsu. Now, Nick is a child in a berserk-looking forest, and this little boy is scared. He's calling for Andre, and in real life, Andre comes through. He's like, I'll take over. Andre then gets the spoon of sulfur, and keep in mind, when it's boiled, the gaseous sulfuric acid it emits into the air stimulates the air ducts, causes coughing, vomiting, and trouble breathing. Basically, it's really unpleasant like you would imagine. But Andre doesn't imagine this. He's like, fuck man, this is difficult. And Damien being a full Giga Chad is like, all you gotta do is just pour the sulfur on my right hand. You got it, buddy, hang in there. Charles is like, that's enough, bro. I got it. Andre's like, no, stop, no. I'm gonna do it. Andre looking like Baptist as he pours the rest of the sulfur on his hand. Also joins Nick in that genjutsu and wake up, real life, he just can't handle it. While Damien, as giga a Chad as ever, is thanking his right hand for all it's done for him, and no pauses will be tolerated. Charles is like, Andre, I'll pay you for your bravery, but this is my job. I'll prove to you that you haven't hurt this man out of your own selfish desires. Now please, step the fuck down from the platform before your spirit's crushed. Nick is looking like, and then Charles walks up looking like death incarnate. He looks like how every 11-year-old felt when they put like 7 X's in their gamer tag. And he's an empath. He thinks to himself, if I try to kill a person, the same pain attacks my body. Only the ones that are prepared for that can stand on the stage and maintain their sanity. As he pours the sulfur on Damiens, you hear
Pull the hard side. The execution of a cartman will now commence.
I wanna talk like them and talk like brethren, talk through eyes. They say them and turn out tells that tales that told me lies. I see your eyes as no disguise, I see one that will be fine.